The unexpected airport encounter. Keanu Reeves had always preferred to travel under the radar. Unlike many celebrities who basked in the glow of VIP lounges, private jets, and personal escorts, Keanu was a man of simplicity. He stood in lines, carried his own bags, and never demanded special treatment. Fame was something he had learned to navigate with quiet humility. He appreciated his fans, but he never let stardom dictate his everyday life. Today was no different. He was scheduled to fly from Los Angeles International Airport, LAX, to Tokyo for the filming of his highly anticipated new movie. After months of intense training, learning fight choreography, practicing lines, and sculpting his body to fit the demands of his role, his assistant had insisted on booking him a first-class ticket so he could get the rest he needed before stepping onto the set. Keanu had hesitated at first. He didn't mind flying economy. In fact, he often preferred it. Some of his most memorable conversations had taken place in the cramped seats of economy class, talking with strangers who had no idea they were sitting beside a Hollywood icon. But this time, he allowed himself a small indulgence. With his duffel bag slung over his shoulder, he made his way through the airport, nodding politely at the occasional fan who recognized him. He wasn't wearing sunglasses or a hat to disguise himself. He never felt the need to. If someone approached him for a picture or a handshake, he would gladly oblige. As he arrived at the first-class check-in counter, he was met with the usual airport chaos. Passengers rushing, flight announcements crackling overhead, security officers scanning bags, and airline personnel directing travelers to their respective gates. Behind the check-in counter stood a woman in a crisp airline uniform, her blonde hair pulled into a sleek bun, her expression impassive. Her name tag read Malign. Keanu stepped forward and handed over his boarding pass. Without even looking up at him, Malign held up a hand, stopping him mid-step. "First-class passengers only," she said, her tone sharp and businesslike. Keanu, unfazed, gave her a small smile and gestured to the ticket in his hand. "I am flying first class." She took the ticket from him, her eyes scanning it quickly, her lips pressed together, her brows furrowing slightly. Then, her expression shifted into something colder. "This must be a mistake," she muttered, shaking her head. Keanu frowned slightly. "I don't think so. That's my seat." Malign exhaled sharply, shaking her head. "I'm sorry, but we can't allow upgrades or—" "It's not an upgrade," Keanu interrupted gently. "It's a confirmed first-class ticket." She glanced up at him for the first time, really looking at him. There was a flicker of recognition in her eyes, but she dismissed it almost immediately. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step aside," she said curtly. Keanu took a slow breath, trying to keep his patience. "Is there a problem?" Malign sighed, tapping at her computer keyboard. "Your ticket doesn't match the standard profile of our first-class passengers." Keanu raised an eyebrow. "And what does that mean?" She hesitated for a fraction of a second before answering. "First-class passengers usually have frequent flyer status, corporate accounts, or a certain level of booking history. We don't normally see individual bookings like this." Keanu stared at her, realizing what was happening. She didn't recognize him, not fully, and she assumed he didn't belong in first class. He could have argued. He could have pulled out his ID, shown his name on the booking, or even made a phone call to the airline to clear up the misunderstanding. But instead, he simply said, "Are you denying me my seat?" Malign pursed her lips. "I'm just following protocol, sir. I need to verify your booking before I can let you board." Keanu sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. He had been looking forward to getting on the plane, settling into his seat, and getting some sleep. Instead, he found himself in an unnecessary confrontation with someone who was judging him based on appearances. Before he could say another word, Malign did something unexpected. She took his boarding pass and ripped it in half. The sound of tearing paper echoed between them. Keanu froze, staring at the shredded ticket in her hands. "There," she said, dusting off her hands as if she had just taken out the trash. "Now, if you don't mind stepping aside so I can assist other passengers." A few gasps sounded from behind Keanu. People had been watching. A few had their phones out. Keanu exhaled slowly, pressing his lips together. He wasn't angry. He had seen this kind of thing before. He knew what it was. A simple case of someone thinking they had the power to decide who belonged. Meline folded her arms. "Sir, I suggest you go speak to customer service if you want a refund. But you won't be boarding this flight today." Keanu gave her a small nod. "All right." He turned, slung his duffel bag back over his shoulder, and walked away without another word. But the story wasn't over. Because the CEO of the airline was watching, and he had just witnessed everything. The truth in the shadows, a silent observer. As Keanu Reeves walked away, a hush settled over the first-class check-in area. Some passengers who had witnessed the confrontation exchanged whispers, while others stared at their phones, likely composing tweets or recording clips of the encounter. Meline, still standing at the counter, let out a sharp breath, shaking her head as if she had just dealt with an inconvenience. She had been working in this airline for 6 years, and in her experience, people who looked like him, casually dressed, no ostentatious display of wealth, often tried to sneak into first class with fake or last-minute upgraded tickets. To her, this was no different. But what she failed to realize was that her biggest mistake wasn't just ripping up that ticket. A man sitting in the nearby VIP lounge had been watching everything from the moment Keanu approached the counter. He was dressed in an understated black suit, his salt and pepper hair neatly combed back, his sharp eyes narrowing as the scene unfolded. He wasn't just any businessman waiting for his flight. He was Michael Harrington, and he was the CEO of the airline. Michael had built the company from the ground up. He knew the importance of customer service, the importance of respect, and most of all, the importance of treating people fairly, regardless of who they were. Keanu hadn't demanded special treatment. He hadn't thrown a tantrum. He had handled the situation with grace, even when he had every right to be furious. That, to Michael, said more about the actor's character than any publicity stunt ever could. He leaned back in his chair, set his glass of water down, and pulled out his phone. "Get the head of customer relations at the first-class check-in desk. Now." Keanu's unbothered exit. Meanwhile, Keanu had reached the customer service desk, where a startled representative looked up at him. "Sir, how can I just need to verify my ticket." The lady at check-in ripped mine up. The young woman's eyes widened. What? Keanu chuckled softly. "Yeah. It's okay, though. I just need to know if my booking is still in the system." The employee scrambled to type his name into the computer. Within seconds, his first-class ticket popped up on the screen. "Oh, yes, Mr. Reeves, you absolutely have a confirmed first-class seat. I don't know why she would have done that. Let me just reprint this." Before she could finish, a man in a suit approached. "Mr. Reeves." Keanu turned. Michael Harrington stood before him. Keanu's brow furrowed slightly. He didn't recognize the man. "Yes." Michael smiled warmly and extended a hand. "I'm Michael Harrington, CEO of this airline." Keanu hesitated for a split second before shaking his hand. "Ah, nice to meet you." Michael's smile faded. "I witnessed everything that happened back there. I sincerely apologize for the way you were treated." Keanu shrugged. "It's not a big deal. These things happen." Michael's jaw tightened. "It is a big deal. We don't treat people like that in this company, and I plan to make sure that it never happens again." Keanu studied him for a moment. There was something about Michael's tone that told him this wasn't just corporate damage control. The man meant it. The customer service agent reprinted Keanu's first-class boarding pass and handed it to him. "Here you go, sir. Everything is set." Michael took a deep breath. "If you don't mind, I'd like to escort you to the gate myself." Keanu grinned. "Well, That's a first. They walked side by side through the airport, a few passengers sneaking glances at them. But back at the first-class counter, Maline was in trouble. The moment of reckoning. Maline was helping another passenger when she suddenly noticed 3 uniformed employees walking toward her. Among them was Mark Delaney, the head of customer relations. Her stomach dropped. "Ms. Maline," Mark's voice was firm. "Step aside, please." Confused, she complied, her heart thumping. "What's going on?" Mark turned to the next staff member. "Take over her station." Then he faced Maline. "You are being put on immediate suspension, pending an investigation into today's incident." Maline's lips parted in shock. "What? For what?" Mark's expression darkened. "You denied a confirmed first-class passenger their rightful seat. Worse, you ripped up his ticket and dismissed him without verifying his booking. That is an unacceptable breach of professionalism." Maline's heart pounded as realization crashed over her. I didn't know he was him." Mark's eyes flashed. "That's exactly the problem, Maline. If he wasn't famous, would it have been okay to treat a regular person like that?" Maline opened her mouth to argue but had no defense. She thought she had been following protocol. But in truth, she had been making assumptions, and she was paying the price for it. A new perspective. Meanwhile, at the boarding gate, Keanu and Michael approached the first-class entrance. Michael smiled. "I appreciate how you handled everything, Mr. Reeves. Not many people would have been so composed." Keanu laughed. "I've been in Hollywood for decades. You get used to surprises." Michael chuckled, then his expression grew serious. "I want to thank you, not just for your patience, but for being the kind of person who doesn't let power or fame get to his head. That's rare." Keanu nodded. "Well, I think life's too short to waste time being upset about small things." Michael smiled. "Even so, I'd like to make it up to you. Please accept a lifetime VIP membership with our airline. No questions, no check-ins, no hassle. Just board whenever you need." Keanu blinked. "That's incredibly generous." Michael grinned. "Call it our way of saying thank you." Keanu chuckled, taking the black VIP membership card Michael handed him. "All right. I guess I won't say no." As they approached the aircraft, Michael extended his hand again. Keanu shook it firmly. "Thanks for stepping in back there." Michael smirked. "Thank you for reminding me why treating people with respect, no matter who they are, is always the right thing to do." And with that, Keanu stepped onto the plane, settling into his rightful first-class seat. Meanwhile, Maline sat in an empty break room, staring at a disciplinary notice, realizing she had just learned a lesson she'd never forget. The ripple effect. Maline's silence. Maline sat in the dimly lit break room, the sounds of bustling passengers now just a distant hum. Her hands trembled as she reread the disciplinary notice in front of her. Suspension, pending investigation. Her mind replayed the scene over and over. The way she had dismissed Keanu. The way she had ripped his ticket in half without so much as verifying it. The way Michael Harrington, the CEO himself, had stepped in. An act that made her realize just how badly she had messed up. It hadn't just been about Keanu's fame. That was the bitter truth. If she was being honest with herself, she had made assumptions. He didn't look like a first-class passenger. That thought sickened her now. What did a first-class passenger even look like? And who was she to decide who belonged and who didn't? Maline had worked hard to build her career, climbing from a ticketing agent to a first-class service representative. But today, a single moment of arrogance and misjudgment had jeopardized everything. A soft knock at the door snapped her out of her thoughts. She looked up to see Mark Delaney, the head of customer relations, standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "Can we talk?" he asked. She swallowed hard, nodding. Mark stepped inside, shutting the door behind him. He set a folder on the table and exhaled. "You probably know why I'm here." Maline let out a bitter laugh. "To fire me." Mark shook his head. "Not yet. But things aren't looking good for you, Meline. She leaned back in her chair. I know. Mark studied her for a moment. I want to ask you something, and I need an honest answer. She nodded. Would you have treated him the same way if he wasn't famous? Meline opened her mouth to reply, but then she hesitated, because deep down, she knew the answer. She had done what so many people in customer service did, often unconsciously. She had judged someone based on appearance, assumptions, and bias. Her silence was all the answer Mark needed. I thought so, he muttered. He tapped the folder in front of him. It's not just about today's incident. We've been getting complaints about you for months. Passengers saying you were cold, dismissive, sometimes even rude. Meline's face flushed with shame. I know you've been in this job for years, and I know you're good at it. But somewhere along the way, you lost the ability to treat people with respect. It's not just about rules, Meline. It's about basic human decency. She lowered her gaze. I didn't realize. Mark sighed. Michael Harrington doesn't tolerate this kind of behavior in his company. And after today, you're lucky if you get a second chance. Meline's stomach twisted. Is there anything I can do? Mark leaned forward. Maybe, but it's not up to me. She frowned. Then who? Mark hesitated. Then he said, Keanu Reeves. Tokyo's warm welcome. Meanwhile, Keanu's flight landed in Tokyo. The moment he stepped off the plane, he was greeted by an enthusiastic crowd of fans, holding signs, taking pictures, and waving excitedly. He smiled, took a few photos, and waved before making his way toward the exit. As he passed through security, his phone buzzed. A text from Michael Harrington. Michael, I need to ask you a favor. Keanu raised an eyebrow and typed back. Keanu, what kind of favor? Within seconds, his phone rang. Keanu answered, walking toward the car waiting for him outside. Michael. Hey, Keanu. Michael's voice was calm, but there was something serious in his tone. I wanted to follow up about what happened at LAX. Keanu smirked. Oh, you mean when I got kicked out of first class and had my ticket shredded? Michael chuckled. Yeah, that. He sighed. Listen, I had a long conversation with Meline. She knows she messed up. And frankly, she's lucky I didn't fire her on the spot. Keanu didn't say anything, waiting for him to continue. But here's the thing. She's not a bad employee. She's just lost perspective. I can fire her, or I can give her a chance to make things right. Keanu already saw where this was going. You want me to be the one to decide. Michael exhaled. You're the one she wronged. It should be up to you. Keanu leaned against the car, thinking. Most people would want revenge, or at the very least, justice. But Keanu Reeves was not most people. All right, he said finally. Let's give her a chance. The redemption chance. 2 days later, back at LAX, Meline sat in a meeting room, her stomach in knots. The door opened, and Keanu Reeves walked in. Meline nearly fell out of her chair. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Keanu sat across from her, studying her for a moment. Then he said, So, what did you learn? Meline swallowed hard. That I was wrong. Keanu nodded, and she hesitated, then let out a breath. I let my own biases cloud my judgment. I assumed you didn't belong in first class, and that was unfair. I don't want to be that kind of person. Keanu tapped his fingers on the table. Do you want a second chance? She nodded quickly. More than anything. Keanu leaned forward. Then earn it. Meline blinked. Keanu smiled. I told Michael not to fire you, but I want you to make things right. Not just with me, with every passenger who walks up to your counter. Meline felt tears pricking her eyes. I will. Keanu grinned. Good. He stood up. See you next time I fly first class. And with that, he walked out. Meline sat there, overwhelmed, grateful, and determined. She had been given a rare second chance, and she was not going to waste it. A second chance in the sky. Melaine sat at her desk, staring at the blank document in front of her. Employee Retraining Program. Personal reflection was written at the top. It had been 2 weeks since her suspension had been lifted. 2 weeks since Keanu Reeves had walked into that meeting room and given her a chance she didn't deserve. A chance she had vowed not to waste. Her return to work hadn't been easy. Her colleagues whispered behind her back. Some passengers, who had seen the viral video of her encounter with Keanu, gave her knowing looks, some even scoffing as they passed by. But she didn't let it break her, because for the first time in years, she truly understood the weight of her job. It wasn't just about checking tickets or enforcing policies. It was about people. And today, she was going to prove that she had changed. An unfamiliar kindness. The morning rush at LAX was the usual chaos. Passengers sprinting to gates, flight delays flashing on monitors, luggage rolling across the floors. Melaine had been reassigned from the first-class counter to general check-in, a demotion that would have once felt like an insult. But now she saw it as an opportunity. She greeted every passenger with warmth, smiled genuinely, and for the first time in a long while, she listened. A young mother with a crying baby struggled with her bags. Instead of simply pointing her toward the baggage drop-off, Melaine stepped out from behind the counter and helped her carry them. An elderly man, confused by his itinerary, fumbled with his paperwork. Instead of hurrying him along, she patiently explained each step. Little by little, she felt something shift inside her. She no longer saw these people as tasks or obstacles. She saw them as individuals. And for the first time in her career, she felt pride in what she did. A familiar passenger. By the afternoon, Melaine was about to take her break when a VIP booking alert flashed on her screen. She glanced at the name. Her stomach dropped. Keanu Reeves. He was flying to London this time, and he was arriving in 15 minutes. Melaine's heart pounded. Would he even recognize her? Would he regret giving her another chance? She straightened her uniform and took a deep breath. This was her moment to prove herself. A different encounter. When Keanu Reeves walked up to the counter, it was different this time. There were no assumptions, no hesitation, no ripped tickets. Melaine greeted him with a warm, genuine smile. "Mr. Reeves," she said, her voice steady. "Welcome back." Keanu's eyes flicked up to her name tag. He recognized her, but instead of tension, he saw something else in her expression. Something. Change. "Nice to see you again, Melaine." She took his passport and processed his check-in flawlessly. She didn't rush, didn't overcompensate, just did her job with care. As she handed him his first-class boarding pass, she met his eyes. "I just wanted to say, thank you." Keanu tilted his head. "For what?" "For giving me a second chance." She smiled, not out of guilt, but gratitude. "I won't waste it." Keanu grinned. "I believe you." Then, with a nod of approval, he took his ticket and walked toward security. Melaine exhaled, her shoulders relaxing. She had done it. She had become the person she should have been all along. And this time, she didn't need to be reminded. The unexpected twist. As Keanu settled into his first-class seat, he glanced out the window, reflecting on how different this flight felt from the last one. Just then, his phone buzzed. A text from Michael Harrington, the CEO. "Michael, you were right about her." Keanu smiled, typing back. "Keanu, people just need a little kindness." Michael's next message made him pause. "Michael, speaking of kindness, how do you feel about surprises?" Keanu raised an eyebrow. "Keanu, what kind of surprises?" Michael responded with a winking emoji. Keanu shook his head, chuckling. He had no idea what was coming. But if he had learned anything from this journey, it was that sometimes the best stories weren't scripted. They were just waiting to unfold. The surprise that changed everything. Keanu Reeves had always been a man who embraced the unexpected. Life had taught him that the best moments often came without warning, whether it was a spontaneous motorcycle ride through the streets of Paris, an unplanned conversation with a stranger in a diner, or, in this case, a mystery waiting for him in London. As the plane taxied down the runway, preparing for takeoff, Keanu glanced at his phone again. Michael Harrington's last text still lingered on the screen. "Michael, speaking of kindness, how do you feel about surprises?" Keanu smirked. What was the CEO up to? Whatever it was, he'd find out soon enough. A flight unlike any other. The cabin crew moved through first class, offering warm towels and glasses of champagne. Keanu declined the drink but took the towel, pressing it to his face with a sigh. Unlike his last flight, there was no tension, no misunderstandings, no ripped tickets. Instead, there was an odd sense of anticipation. He stretched his legs, glancing around at the other passengers, a businessman typing furiously on his laptop, a quiet couple holding hands, a woman reading a hardcover book, just another ordinary flight. Or so he thought. Because 3 hours in, at 40,000 feet above the Atlantic Ocean, something happened that changed everything. The whispered name. Keanu had just closed his eyes when he felt a soft tap on his shoulder. He opened them to see a flight attendant standing beside him. She looked nervous, holding a small folded note in her hand. "Mr. Reeves," she said in a hushed voice. "This was just delivered to us, anonymously." Keanu frowned but took the note. He unfolded it slowly. One sentence, one simple, handwritten sentence that sent a chill down his spine. "She's waiting for you in London." Keanu's pulse quickened. She. Before he could ask the flight attendant anything, she gave a polite nod and walked away. Keanu stared at the note, turning it over. No signature. No hint of who wrote it. Who was she? And why did it feel like he was walking into a mystery, landing in London? When the plane finally touched down at Heathrow Airport, Keanu stepped off with more questions than answers. His assistant had arranged for a car to take him to his hotel, but as he walked through the terminal, he found himself scanning the faces in the crowd, half expecting someone to step forward. No one did, until he reached the private arrivals lounge. That's when he saw her. The face from the past. Sitting in the corner of the lounge was a woman who Keanu hadn't seen in nearly 20 years. Her hair was shorter than he remembered, a few streaks of gray at her temples. But her face, the way her eyes softened when she saw him, was unmistakable. Keanu stopped mid-step. "Emily." She smiled, standing slowly. "Hey, Key." His heart clenched at the sound of her voice. Emily Dawson. The woman he had once loved. The woman who had been part of his life before the fame, before the chaos, before everything changed. The woman he thought he'd never see again. A conversation years in the making. Keanu sat across from Emily, his hands clasped together. "So," he finally said, his voice quieter than usual. "You're the surprise." Emily chuckled. "Not exactly. I think that was Michael's idea." Keanu shook his head, exhaling. "That man is full of tricks." A pause stretched between them. Not uncomfortable, but heavy with unspoken words. Keanu had loved Emily once. Deeply. They had met when he was still an up-and-coming actor, before he was a household name. Before his life was consumed by cameras and premieres. She had been the one person who grounded him, and yet life had pulled them in different directions. Now, after all these years, she was here. "Why now?" Keanu asked softly. Emily's smile faded. She hesitated, then reached into her bag and pulled out a worn letter. "I never sent this," she admitted, handing it to him. Keanu took it carefully, unfolding the paper. The date on the top was from 15 years ago. He began to read. "Keanu, I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I wanted to say I'm sorry. Not for leaving, but for never telling you why. Life took us on different paths, but you were never far from my thoughts. If fate ever brings us back together, I hope we can talk again. Maybe we were never meant to last, But we were always meant to matter. Keanu swallowed hard. All these years, he had thought their ending had been final. But here she was, holding out an unwritten chapter. An unfinished story. They talked for hours. About the years they had missed. The paths they had taken. The things they had left unsaid. Keanu didn't know if this was fate or just a chance encounter orchestrated by a mischievous CEO. But for the first time in a long time, he realized something. Some stories don't have endings. Some stories just pause until the right moment. And maybe, just maybe, this was their moment. Back in the sky. A week later, Keanu was back at the airport. Same airline. Same first-class counter. And behind the desk, Milan. She looked up, startled to see him again. But this time, she smiled. "Mr. Reeves," she said warmly, "off to another adventure." Keanu grinned, something like that. She checked him in smoothly, efficiently. No hesitation. No assumptions. Before he walked away, he paused. "Milan." She looked up. "You did good." Her breath hitched, but she nodded, smiling. "Safe travels, Mr. Reeves." Keanu gave her a small salute before heading toward security. The final twist. As Keanu settled into his seat, his phone buzzed again. A text from Emily. "Emily, so, do you believe in second chances?" Keanu smirked, staring out the window as the plane lifted off. "Keanu, I think I do now." And with that, he closed his eyes, letting the next chapter of his story unfold, one unexpected moment at a time. The crossroads of fate. Keanu Reeves had always believed that life was unpredictable. But sitting in the first-class cabin, staring at the last text from Emily, he found himself wondering if some things weren't just random twists of fate, but unfinished business waiting for the right time. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind. From the unexpected airport encounter to the redemption of Milan, and now, to a woman he once thought was lost to time sitting across from him in a cafe, holding an unsent letter from 15 years ago. His mind drifted back to that conversation in London. London, a week ago. Emily sipped her tea, her fingers wrapped around the cup as if it anchored her. Keanu sat across from her, watching her quietly. "So, you never sent the letter?" She shook her head. "I wanted to. I almost did. But then, I don't know. Life happened." Keanu chuckled softly. Life has a habit of doing that. She smiled, but there was a sadness in her eyes. "I kept up with you. Saw your movies, read the interviews. Every time I saw you on screen, I wondered if you were happy." Keanu tilted his head. "And what did you decide?" Emily hesitated. "I decided that you looked like a man who had learned to live with loss." His breath caught. Because she wasn't wrong. He had known loss, more than most. His best friend. His unborn child. His love, Jennifer Syme. And Emily, though she hadn't died, she had still been a loss. Keanu exhaled, leaning back in his chair. "You know, when you left, I thought it was because I wasn't enough." Emily's eyes widened. "No, Kay. It was never that." He gave her a sad smile. "Then what was it?" She bit her lip. "I was scared. Scared of being swallowed by your world. Scared that I would become just another person orbiting Keanu Reeves, the movie star, instead of Keanu, the man I loved." Silence stretched between them. Keanu let her words sink in. He had never realized how his growing fame might have pushed her away, made her feel like she had to disappear before she lost herself. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing against hers. "I wish you had told me back then." Emily looked down at their hands. "I do too." Keanu sighed. "So why now? Why did Michael bring you here?" Emily smirked. "Because he's a meddler." Keanu laughed. And just like that, the tension in the air eased. They were older now. Different. But the connection between them, still there. Back to the present. Keanu's plane landed in New York, his next destination before heading back to LA. As he stepped into the private lounge, His phone buzzed again. Emily. Emily. So, do we call this fate? He chuckled, typing back. Keanu. I call it Michael's mischief. A pause. Then another message. Emily. Come meet me. There's something I want to tell you. His heartbeat quickened. A year ago, he would have hesitated. But now he wasn't sure he wanted to leave things unfinished. Keanu Reeves had spent a lifetime chasing roles. Maybe it was time to stop running from his own story. Meanwhile, at LAX, Milene had been given one final test. Mark Delaney, the head of customer relations, had assigned her a VIP escort duty. At first, she thought it was punishment, but when she saw the name on the itinerary, she almost laughed. Michael Harrington, the CEO himself. Milene took a deep breath as she approached the tarmac, where Michael's private jet had just landed. He stepped out, sunglasses on, his usual cool confidence intact. Milene, he greeted. Nice to see you still here. She nodded, standing straighter. Thank you for the second chance. Sir. Michael smirked. Actually, you should thank Keanu for that. Milene's smile softened. I already did. Michael handed her his boarding pass. Tell me, Milene, how's it been? She exhaled, her mind flashing back to the past few weeks. The lessons she had learned, the people she had helped, the change within herself. It's been eye-opening, she admitted. Michael chuckled. Good, because I have an offer for you. Milene blinked. An offer? Michael nodded. We need people in our customer relations division. People who know what it's like to make mistakes, but more importantly, people who know how to fix them. Milene's jaw dropped. You want me to work in corporate? Michael grinned. It's time you started teaching others what you just learned. Tears pricked at Milene's eyes. She had gone from the brink of losing everything to being offered a position she never dreamed of. Because of one man's forgiveness. She smiled. I won't waste it, sir. Michael patted her shoulder. I know you won't. And just like that, her future changed. A love story, or something more. That evening, Keanu met Emily at a small cafe in Brooklyn. She was already there, sipping on her tea, looking as beautiful as ever. He sat down, tilting his head. All right, I'm here. What's the big reveal? Emily smiled softly. I'm moving back to LA. Keanu's breath hitched. For years, Emily had lived in London, away from Hollywood, away from the life she once feared would consume her. And now she was coming back. He swallowed. Why? Emily held his gaze. Because I realized that I don't have to run from your world anymore. Keanu didn't know what to say. So he just reached for her hand. She let him. And for the first time in years, Keanu Reeves felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The final lesson. 3 people. 3 lives forever changed by a single moment at an airport. Milene, who learned that kindness and humility could transform a career. Michael, who reminded himself that second chances could reveal hidden potential. And Keanu, who finally embraced the possibility of love again. Some people say life is a series of random events. But sometimes life is just waiting for you to stop running and start believing. And for Keanu Reeves, the real journey was just beginning. Full circle, the world had a strange way of bringing people together. Keanu Reeves had spent a lifetime traveling, moving from one film set to another, one city to another, always drifting, but never quite rooted. But now things felt different. Emily was coming back to Los Angeles. Milene had been given a second chance. Michael had reminded himself why kindness mattered in business and life. And Keanu, for the first time in years, he was looking forward to what came next. Los Angeles, the return of an old love. The sun hung low over the LA skyline, casting long golden streaks over the Pacific as Keanu drove through the winding roads of Malibu. Emily sat beside him, staring out the window, lost in thought. How does it feel to be back? Keanu asked. She sighed, a soft smile playing on her lips. Strange, but good. He glanced at her. Still scared. Emily smirked. Terrified. Keanu chuckled. Good. Means we're both in the same place. Emily turned toward him, her eyes searching his face. And where is that? Keanu thought for a moment before answering. Figuring it out. One step at a time. Emily nodded. I can live with that. They pulled up to Keanu's house, a modest but beautiful home nestled in the hills, away from the chaos of Hollywood. As they stepped inside, Emily paused at the door. Keanu turned. She hesitated before saying, This time, I'm not leaving. His heart clenched at the words. She meant it. And for the first time, he let himself believe it. Mylene's new challenge. Across town, at the headquarters of Harrington Airlines, Mylene stood in a high-rise conference room, her palms sweaty. She had spent years behind the check-in counter. Now she was standing in front of a corporate team, expected to lead a new customer experience initiative. Mark Delaney stood beside her, arms crossed. Ready? Mylene exhaled. No, but let's do this anyway. She stepped up to the podium, looking at the executives watching her. Good morning, she began, her voice steady. A few weeks ago, I made a mistake, a big one. A few surprised glances. I let my own biases, my own assumptions, make a decision for me. And it cost me, almost cost me my career. She took a breath, but I was given a second chance, and I believe this company, our company, should be known for that too. She turned to the screen behind her, where a new slogan appeared. Harrington Airlines, where every passenger matters. The room fell silent. Then, one by one, heads began to nod. Mark grinned. Well done, Mylene. And just like that, her journey had come full circle. She had gone from a lesson learned to the one teaching it. Keanu's final conversation with Michael. A few days later, Keanu found himself at a quiet rooftop restaurant in downtown LA, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. Across from him sat Michael Harrington, sipping a glass of whiskey, a satisfied smile on his face. Keanu leaned back. So let me get this straight. You fly Emily out to London. You orchestrate our reunion. And then you promote Mylene to fix a problem that never should have happened in the first place. Michael smirked. You say that like it's a bad thing. Keanu shook his head, chuckling. You play the long game, don't you? Michael shrugged. Let's just say, I like to make things right. Keanu studied him for a moment. So why'd you do it? Michael swirled his drink. Because people like you remind me why I started this airline in the first place. To treat people like human beings, not numbers. Keanu smiled. I can drink to that. They clinked glasses. Michael leaned forward. Tell me, Reeves, what's next for you? Keanu exhaled, thinking. Movies. Maybe a new project. He paused, his smile softening. But mostly, just living. Michael nodded approvingly. Good answer. Keanu grinned. And you? Michael smirked. Oh, don't worry about me. I've already got my next grand plan in motion. Keanu raised an eyebrow. Should I be concerned? Michael just laughed. The final flight. A week later, Keanu found himself back at LAX. Only this time, it wasn't as a passenger. This time, he was saying goodbye. Emily stood beside him, arms crossed. You sure you don't need me to come with you? Keanu smiled. Nah, just a quick shoot in Tokyo. I'll be back before you even start unpacking. She smirked. You better be. Just then, a familiar voice interrupted. Mr. Reeves. Keanu turned. Mylene. She stood at the first-class check-in counter, her uniform neat, her expression calm but warm. Keanu smiled. We have to stop meeting like this. Mylene chuckled. I don't know. Seems like we're making a tradition out of it. She processed his ticket. The right way this time. As she handed it to him, she met his gaze. "Safe travels, Mr. Reeves." Keanu held up the boarding pass. "Thanks, Malign." Then, with a nod to Emily, he turned and walked toward security, disappearing into the terminal. Emily watched him go, her heart full. Malign sighed, watching too. "Lucky woman," she murmured. Emily smiled. "Yeah, I know." As Keanu's plane took off into the sky, a new chapter in his life began. No longer drifting, no longer running, just living. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough.